Hey everybody, welcome to Channel News. We've got Jim Alkove. He's the founding CEO of a company who does identity security stuff called Oleria. And he's got a really interesting history. We're going to dig into it to find out what it's all about, and can't wait to pick Jim's brains. Welcome, Jim. How are you?
Good morning, Julian. Thank you so much for having me. I'm wonderful today, and I'm excited for this opportunity.
I love looking forward to digging into this. So before we just get started, let's talk about all the different things you've done. I mean, you've got quite a history. Give me the rundown.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think that all of us underestimate how much good fortune plays in roles in our careers these days. And I've sort of been very fortunate in my career. I grew up in the Midwest of the United States, but I had a chance to get involved in big technology very early in my career, where I spent a lot of years, almost 17 years at Microsoft, running a couple of really key programs over the time there. I led security for Xbox. For the launch of Xbox One, and I had a chance to also lead commercial Windows and security for Windows 10. So really a chance to lead some transformational projects in the security space. And as I departed Microsoft for a company called Google Nest, where I led product engineering and security, thermostats and video cameras. Many of your viewers probably have a Nest product in their home. I wrapped up my career in big technology as a chief trust officer for Salesforce, where I was responsible for sort of all of information security, data governance, information management, and really being the advocate for trust, which is Salesforce's number one value there. And so as I stepped out of my career in big tech, I then sort of decided what was the next big mission in my life, and I decided that I have the most opportunity to really change the world as a founder of a startup. And so Oleria was born, and I've been on this journey for about 18 months now.
Wow. Well, Jim, to say that you know a thing or two about cybersecurity, it may be the biggest understatement of the world. But wow, congratulations. And we talked briefly about, chief trust officer, which I guess we're hearing more of these days, which is sort of like coincides with the CISO world. How do you define a chief trust officer today?
Well, I think that trust is at the heart of every human relationship. We try to establish trust within our family, trust with our business relationships, trust with our colleagues. And so, at Oleria and at Salesforce, trust was the number one value of those companies. And everyone needs an advocate for their values. And so a chief trust officer's job is really to represent trust broadly within an organization. When you think about security is one aspect of trust, but there's many other aspects. If you think security adjacent, you have fraud and abuse, data information management and governance. You've got privacy, but then more broadly, you've got ethics and integrity and some of the other aspects that often end up in other parts of the organization. And I see the chief trust officer's job is really bringing all of those aspects together by bringing a leadership team. Think of it as a trust council of folks together across an organization to make sure that a big organization like Salesforce is doing everything it should to uphold its number one value of trust.
Yeah, it just makes so much sense. I mean, trust is probably the only currency that matters at the end of the day. But amazing stuff. So thank you for that information there. It's something that we're trying to learn more in the world of cybersecurity. But with your experience in the cyber world, just zoom out a little bit, Jim, and give me your take. Like, what the hell is going on? I mean, we're spending gazillions of dollars in fortifying our cybersecurity defenses. We're still getting breached every day. I kind of heard that there's 200,000 ways for bad actors to get into a system, but they're only using like 1,400 because why use the extra one when you don't need to? How do you look at cybersecurity today, and what do you think we're getting right, and what do you think we're getting wrong from consumers of this tech?
Well, I think the first step is to look at the threat landscape and sort of what we're seeing adversaries do. And adversaries obviously come in different shapes and sizes. You're hearing a lot in the news today about nation state actors and the bad behavior of certain organizations associated with nation states around the world, whether that be Russia or China or Iran or North Korea. And I think that the threat landscape for those actors is getting more challenging than it ever has. This is probably true across all of the threat actors, whether they're cyber criminals, which would be another group of threat actors, or activists. So, as a defender, you have to look at all of those potential threat actors, and the overall threat landscape for defenders is getting more and more challenging. It's more challenging than it's ever been. So we have to, they only have to be right once. We have to be right every single day of the week, which makes sort of very asymmetric situation. I think further, global norms are changing. There's a polarization going on in the world. There's a deglobalization happening. Collaboration amongst nations trying to solve problems is not necessarily at an all-time high. And therefore, the kind of other things we would use to stop cyber action from happening are not as useful to us right now. And so defenders are left more on their own than maybe they've at any time in history. So that's a very gloomy sort of outlook of the cyber landscape, and probably a fair one. On the positive side, the prioritization of cybersecurity is rising in governments. It's rising in private organizations. You're seeing a lot more focus, from the U.S. government and the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency and others, pushing more and more the government itself and industry to raise its game as it relates to cybersecurity. You're seeing the SEC weigh in and work to try to hold organizations and their leadership, especially their cyber leaders, more accountable for their cybersecurity. So you're seeing a rise in priority of cybersecurity amongst organizations, which I think is great. And correlated to that, this year, I think in a good way, we're seeing cybersecurity spend go up, meaningfully. It's not where it was, 3 or 4 years ago when it was really, really rising. But I think the numbers sort of 14%, year-over-year growth this year, which is what we're seeing budgets go up. It depends on whose numbers you look at. That's a pretty healthy growth relative to other IT spending this year. So I would say on one side, it's a very challenging environment. On the other side, I really am heartened to see that people are prioritizing it more. Now we just need to get the technology to really support all those people who are doing the hard work.
Sometimes, Jim, it just feels like we're neck deep in the cyber world, and then it just feels sometimes like there's so many moving parts. Like, there's a lot of shiny balls on the table, and you don't quite know who to trust anymore because everybody sounds alike. Everybody makes crazy claims, and there's billions of dollars being invested every month in the cyber market. So it just seems like the marketing people are taking having a field day with the words and the jargon, and people are starting to sound alike. And for mere mortals in the MSP community, like who do I trust? Like what solution should I go with? It's what do you say about the chaos, if you will, the ballooning, if you will, of all these vendors that's out there, and how do we sort of figure it out? How do we navigate this?
So I sit in sort of a unique perspective. I was a technologist at Microsoft. I'm now a CEO of a technology company in the cybersecurity space, but I was an operator. I was logically a CISO for my time at Salesforce. And so I've kind of sat on both sides of the table. I was a buyer in my time at Salesforce. I actually was a buyer in my time at Microsoft. I was also sort of the divisional CISO for the Windows and Devices division at Microsoft, in addition to my product hat. And so I think this all comes back to trust. Like everybody is kind of saying they're doing the same things. I think if you read all the marketing materials, I agree with you. I think how you cut through it is, go and talk to people who actually really have the experience. And I think the place where Oleria is unique is that we are a team of operators who are building products and solutions for operators. We understand the pain that those operators live every single day. And it's not about marketing for us. It's about helping people achieve their mission. And so, the founding of Oleria was the next mission in my life as a cybersecurity professional, versus a business model. I think we've gotten too much into, how do we quickly create companies and it sort of and derive value for investors, and that doesn't necessarily solve problems for operators. I'm on a mission to solve a problem for operators at Oleria, and I wish and I hope that more and more cybersecurity companies and technology companies in general take a similar approach, which is how do you make your customers successful in a way that they see themselves as successful versus a way that just makes you more money.
Well, let's talk about Oleria then. I mean, what does Oleria do, and why should this matter to the MSP community out there who are plagued with the challenge of protecting themselves first of all and their customers?
So I think that identity is the greatest challenge in cybersecurity today. If you don't know who and what's interacting with your data, you can't secure it. And so, you probably hear the sort of industry talk about moving to a world of zero trust. The challenge with moving to a world of zero trust is that, identity is the cornerstone of zero trust. If you don't know who those people, whether it's a human being or a piece of software that needs to access your system or your data and what it should be doing, then how are you going to secure that process? You're not. And most organizations, 2/3 of organizations, feel like they're not prepared, to the identity challenges they have, and half of them feel like they're understaffed. And I think that represents, of the hundreds of CISOs I've talked to since starting Oleria, I think that's pretty consistent with what I've heard from them. The thing is, I think we're trying to solve a technology problem with humans, and this applies to identity, but it also applies to other areas in cybersecurity. There's 3 million open jobs in cybersecurity today, but we don't have the budgets to hire all those people, even if we had qualified professionals to put in all of those jobs. So we need technology to really step up its game and build a future that's more adaptive and autonomous. And so that's the future we're building at Oleria. We're building a future where every actor, whether it's a human being or a piece of software in an organization, has just the access it needs at the right time for the right duration and no more in the organization, which will dramatically decrease the cybersecurity risk in organizations. Microsoft study says 95% of permissions that are standing in organizations today, no one ever uses. So it's access that's putting your organization at risk, and no one's using it for anything. We're working to change all that, Oleria. And the second thing is autonomous. If you have all of these open jobs and all of these people trying to do manual work, how do we replace that work with AI-based orchestration that is more reliable, more dependable, and a lot more efficient than, a job that's not very fulfilling for a human, which is clicking buttons in some workflow piece of software?
Yeah, and I hear a lot about dynamic, identity management, because we as humans are doing some crazy stuff these days, right? One day we're at location A, 10 minutes we're at location B, 50 minutes we're at location C, when we're on vacation or whatever we're doing, right? And we're expecting to log in, do our work from wherever, however. And that also is a bit of a crazy challenge, because it's no longer, one location within a perimeter that you could sort of quickly identify. Like, the only way someone could really get your computer if you go into a building is if they actually sneak into the building and go to your computer, but now, you've got to manage, right? This wherever I am, anytime I am. Is that something that baked into your solution?
It's a great point that you're making, that the access management needs to be context aware. And you're right, the context around the way we use our systems today is much more complicated than it's ever been, and rightfully so. It should enable great flexibility. At Oleria, we believe that properly implemented security is what sets your business free, and enables your business to accelerate. And so, yes, we are working. That's when we say adaptive, we mean that you get the access you need wherever you are, as long as it's you. The key is making sure that when that user is logging in from somewhere new, that it's actually the user and not, the normal everyday person equivalent of this would be, your credit card works most of the time when the credit card company believes it's you. But when somebody's buying an iPhone in Santa Cruz and you don't live in Santa Cruz, you want them to not allow that charge to go into your credit card. And it's you take a similar approach with identity. We want to know that there's a high probability that you are where you're logging in from on vacation, as opposed to someone who's in a potentially sanctioned country trying to log into your machine and do some work nefariously.
I think you're spot on with the challenge that it's identity theft, right? It's really where people are getting in most of credentials is the easy way in. And it just seems, right, that as humans, right, we're just kind of lax on it, and then forget the actual, my passwords being, silly because I'm using the same thing with Facebook and whatever. Beyond that stuff, you also got the disgruntled employees, the internal threats, there's just so many things. How do you deal with the people who, on one hand, give up their credentials in a stupid way, without wanting to cause harm, and those internally who say, you know what, I'm upset, I'm going to do this, that, and the other. Is there a way to kind of like identify these things and manage it?
Yes, and you're pointing out two of the sort of core scenarios that we work on here at Oleria. There are absolutely great technology solutions to authentication. I helped work on Windows Hello, which is Microsoft's passwordless technology when I was at Microsoft, and that has become very broadly adopted in the form of FIDO2 and passkeys across the industry. Now Google and Apple and everyone else is supporting that. There is a world where humans can have a much simpler way to log in, just a fingerprint on your machine. That's also much more secure. The challenge that practitioners have is making sure that all the accounts that our users have are properly secured with these new advanced mechanisms, multi-factor authentication, passwordless. The tools for identity don't make that easy. Actually, it's a manual spreadsheet-based process for CISOs to go look at who's deployed MFA where. But at Oleria, we make that super simple and automated for a CISO to get an instant a dashboard and understand everywhere in their organization that multi-factor authentication is deployed and what kind of factors are deployed. We also need to get rid of things like SMS one-time passwords and email-based authentications because those are no longer secure as well. And then on the other side, you talked about insiders, and insider threat is rising, amongst organizations. And I think you said one other key point, which is that hackers aren't hacking in as much anymore; they're just logging in, and that's a big transition that we've seen. And now those external threat actors that are compromising accounts, including nation state actors, which are compromising the same way. If you look at Midnight Blizzard, a recent Microsoft incident, that was a nation state actor coming in through an identity entry point into Microsoft. The we're in this situation where identity, has become the new battleground for cybersecurity, and we need to bring identity to the incident response process to help defenders be able to respond to those types of attacks. Unfortunately, that's not what typical tools do. Defenders have traditional tools like EDR systems that look at endpoint security, and try to tell you whether there's malware on a machine. And in these identity-based attacks, there is no malware in those scenarios. And so you need to bring identity to the incident response process, is what we do at Oleria.
Yeah, I mean, some of the malware stuff is becoming like Mickey Mouse now. It's like it's the low level, hackers are getting in there. Another thing we were seeing is that state actors used to get into big systems because they want to steal IP, learn stuff, deep secrets in governments and still on things like this. And then it seems like they're sharing some techniques now with the group, the money group, right? Who's just doing this to drive revenue, because that in a way it's a disruptor to the economy, to the businesses, to whatever is going on. Are you seeing state actors sort of doing their thing, but also sharing some secrets with the bad actors as well?
Well, I don't know that attribution in this area is really hard. What I'll say is there are definitely some patterns that are concerning. One, that there are patterns that are seen where operators that work in government in nation state offensive security teams around the world seem to be on the side making money, using the same tools and techniques that they use in the government, which is troubling, meaning that the government's not controlling the use of its sensitive offensive security tools. Offensive security tools have been used in espionage for a long time, but the idea that a government would allow those tools to be used for profit outside of the walls of its espionage facilities is really deeply troubling. And you're seeing, look at some of the major threat intel providers, and you're seeing this reported from those entities. I think that the other thing to remember about cyber weapons is that unlike a kinetic weapon that you can put in a bunker or in a warehouse and you can lock it down and put armed guards around it, once a cyber weapon's been deployed, it's very difficult to put genie back in the bottle. So the WannaCry ransomware is an example of a vulnerability that came out via a nation state actor, but then was ultimately exploited very broadly by cyber criminals in ransomware. And we see that pattern continue to happen. And I think we will always see that happen. And ransomware has become a service, there's a service model for ransomware. You just need to want to issue perpetrate a ransomware attack, and there's a whole ecosystem of people who will help you do it, even if you don't have the skills to do it. All of those things as a defender are super troubling, which is why the technology industry, and this is what we're trying to help with at Oleria, the technology industry needs to come to the rescue and help defenders make this easier, because there is a rising tide of threats that they can't handle with just more people and more dollars.
Oh man, ransomware is a service for only $59 a month. You can become your own ransomware group. Interesting world. Another thing as well is, I mean, apparently if you put the money that ransomware is generating, it would be economically, it would be the third largest GP in any country in the world, right? The third largest country. That's the equivalent of what it's generating. I don't know how true that is, but it's certainly, maybe in the top 10. So that's a lot of money, right? And because there's a lot of money, it's just not going to go away, right? It's that's becoming the livelihoods of many of these actors. So now I just want to touch on the on AI and how, because it just seems to me that at the end of the day, right, the only way you're going to fight this is fight fire with fire. You've got to leverage some smart AI to sort of check these things out and do. How are you baking in AI, and how are you leveraging AI into your stuff? And I know everybody talks about AI, but we are in this world we're living in right now. Are you using it, and how are you?
So we see enormous potential for AI in the identity space, actually more broadly in the cybersecurity space, but with our focus on identity, we see enormous opportunity in the AI space. Obviously, AI is already being weaponized by attackers with deepfakes and better phishing mails and vulnerability discovery. We're seeing attackers scale up their use. They're very innovative. They tend to be early adopters on the adoption curve, technology adoption curve. Attackers tend to be very early adopters. We need to push that up on the defender side as well. I think there's an important thing to note with AI though, which is we're at pretty high fever pitch with AI right now in the industry, and we all in cybersecurity, getting it right is really, really important. And so I think we need to be cautious about what guardrails need to be in place to make sure that we're getting the exact outcomes that we want. And so the first step in getting great AI is bringing data, high quality data to the conversation. And that's the first change that we're driving at Oleria. We're bringing a data science approach to identity, which is different than has historically been, in the large, the identity platforms that have come before the legacy identity platforms. And then we see AI's ability to both help predict access, meaning understanding who should have access to what, when, and for how long, and also orchestration. I mentioned earlier that we need to move to a more autonomous future, and so we see AI and AI-based orchestration as really a future way to address the fact that there aren't enough humans to deploy against the identity problem, and probably more broadly all the problems in cybersecurity and technology in general. And so how do we bring the best of humans and the best of AI together to solve this problem with identity?
I don't claim to be an AI expert in any stretch of the imagination. I'm just a student of it, and I listen to all the AI experts until I'm sick of it. But in reality, the one thing that I've sort of come to understand is that AI is like a one-way street. There's no delete button on it, and once it goes out there, if you use AI and pumping in all your great information into it, and it goes out there, there's a way for others to access and find that information because it's out there, right? And I think people just don't understand that you're pumping your data into this pool, this massive pool to which everybody has access to. And if you're not careful in what you're pumping out there in the pool, then it's now you're giving them information that you may not want to give. And I heard some nightmare stories. One in particular when there was this from a big CISO that a customer of them had a board meeting, and then the new folks that came in took the old data stuff and the presentations, uploaded it, asked the AI to kind of rock it out, make it better, put all the latest numbers in, and bam, bam, bam. And 48 hours later, that data was compromised because they uploaded all their boardroom secrets, you know, into some AI. Is that a thing? Should we worry about this?
I think that everyone should be concerned about properly, safely using AI.
Mm.
And I think that there are safe ways to approach using AI, including LLMs, which is the technology that you're sort of referring to as in the use cases that you're describing. And the first step is to take a step back and realize that even in LLMs, there are private models where you can keep your corporate data from leaking into the public model, separate from, say, using an open platform like ChatGPT to do the work that you're talking about. So the first step is for organizations to realize that they do need AI governance in their, right now. It's time for organizations to take a responsible approach to setting boundaries about how they're going to use AI and understanding the risks to their organization. You mentioned one of them, which is information disclosure, that your information would leak into public models, and that's something that everyone should be worried about. IP, since confidential information leaking or IP leaking, but there are other challenges, at play here also, which is, there are people customer service agents, chatbots that have given out inappropriate refund policies that have, people have had to honor because the chatbot said that, that was their policy and the consumer didn't know any better. And so you need to take a step back and understand, what are you really trying to achieve with your business? And then take a risk management framework and to approach to addressing deploying AI. I'm all for going fast, but I think we all need to go fast with guardrails. Rushing to AI is like running with scissors, and if you're going to get hurt if you do that. So take a step back and really ask yourself what business outcome you're trying to achieve, and then put the right guardrails around it. And then when you're looking at security, there are whole companies being built to help people build, more securely deploy and manage AI. And so, look at what's going on with the AI risk management frameworks and security tools around securely and safely deploying AI. There are safe approaches to doing it. I would say that, like many things, the exuberance to get the outcome sometimes overwhelms our calmer need to do it responsibly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to rain in anyone's parade, but even the private LLMs, right? I get it. It's private, doesn't go into the no man's land out there. But to me, if hackers are getting into data centers and data from a company, I mean, maybe they can get into those private LLMs too. So uh, I don't know where all this stuff ends, but I just know that we're doing stuff, and then we're figuring out after, if it was a good idea or a bad idea, right? And hopefully we can finally make some sense out of all this. So, but getting back to this identity management and where you think the crux of the matter is, right? Um, how how should people approach, first of all, identity management, and how is there's a lot of solutions out there, and how does yours differentiate from some of the other ones that's in the market right now?
So, I think that the way I would describe this is that organizations need a single source of truth for identity in their enterprises. And that's really what we're building at Oleria. We're building a brain that sits at the center of your identity system, that connects to your identity provider. So, the Active Directory, or Okta, or Google Workspace, connect to all of your applications and bring all of your identity information together in one place so that you can understand, you get central point of visibility and a central point of control for all of your access. Today, the state of the art in managing access is sort of swivel chairing between all of these different applications and infrastructure in their admin consoles, trying to manage access one at a time. No one is sitting looking comprehensively at their access. And when you think about access, it's just like the doors and windows on a building. If you don't understand all of the entry points into the building and you're trying to lock the building, you're not going to be successful in keeping people from getting into the building. The same thing is true with identity and your information in enterprise. And so you really do need to have a single source of truth, a central point of visibility, and a central point of control. And that's the starting point of what we're building at Oleria. we have a framework a 3-step framework we call visibility, insights, action. How do we give you comprehensive visibility into all of your identity information? How do we give you business intelligence and recommendations on how to improve the state of identity in your organization? And then how do we allow you to take autonomous action, software acting on your behalf to take advantage and remediate those issues and take action on those recommendations without humans having to sort of respond to tickets like traditional IT security systems.
Hey, Jim, is your solution shipping now or is it coming out?
Yes, we announced the general availability of our solution at the end of April, although we've had customers, including commercial customers, using the product since last year.
Right on. Look, I mean, anybody who solves this nut, right, is gonna, help a lot of companies, accelerate their security posture pretty quick, because nobody wants to have their credentials, being the open door or window, right, to their world. Yet we're seeing also different attacks coming in now from text and phones and different ways. I mean, I don't know how many you get this likely spam, that famous person there, and then now you're getting all notifications from different companies that that we all buy from, and then we don't know who's the right one and who's the wrong one. You learn, but then not everybody is up to speed, right? Is it a futile experience to really keep trying to teach humans how to recognize these attacks these phishing attacks is getting smarter and smarter? Or do we need to really rely on the technology to sort of stop this from happening?
So look, I think like many things, we need to do both. I think that we need to teach humans to focus on the basics and actually invest in good cyber hygiene. And by the way, this is not just at work, this is also at home. You're seeing a number of incidents where corporate executives and their families are being targeted in order to get access to corporate information or blackmail people. And so your cyber hygiene is not just for work. We need everyone to nail the basics across their whole life. And so when I think about teaching people culture around cybersecurity, it should be everyone. It should be taught in schools. Everyone should and everyone should take the time. I know that it takes a little extra effort to turn on multi-factor authentication and go through that extra step, just a little bit of extra work to avoid a whole lot of identity theft and account compromise pain in your personal life and your professional life. And then technology needs to dramatically up its game. I think that we need to make the human the one line of defense, not the only line of defense on so many of these aspects. We can't blame the users of technology. We need to reflect on ourselves as technologists and realize that we have not yet met our outcome if we deliver technology that solely relies on a human to understand whether or not something's good or bad. We haven't served the humans. Technology exists to serve humans, make human life easier. And in this case, I don't think it is. And we have a lot more work to do, which is why I ultimately decided to take this mission on. Exactly.
Last questions coming up here, and I'm going to skip over the government, compliance stuff, because I personally believe they're way late to the game, as they're going to be way late to the AI game. And yet, we'll figure this out as we go. But better late than never, man. If you're going to come to the party, you better late than never.
Well, they bring a different angle. They have the ability to compel people. If you look at GDPR, the fines associated with GDPR really motivated people to take data deletion and things very seriously in a way that the industry had not historically. And so I think that there is a role for regulation in technology, but I totally agree with you. It's a delayed reaction. And so we as technologists need to be leading, and we need to hold ourselves to a higher bar. And I'm optimistic seeing some of the recent changes, including Microsoft's Secure Future Initiative, and that they need to continue to lean into improving their state of security, that organizations will really step up.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, better late than never for me is the bottom line. But I think we all agree that it's a little bit late to the game. Hopefully, it accelerates and puts more teeth into this that makes people understand that this is serious stuff. Personally, I think it's the most serious thing facing society, second only to the sustainability of the world. So one is going to kill us at some point. This one may kill us of 1,000 cuts before we burn up alive. But I'll become more optimistic. But the last headwind I want to talk about is the insurance people seems to be the folks that is making the bigger moves, because insurance companies don't like paying out. They want to receive those premiums and pay net zero, and they're paying twice as much out as they're collecting right now in cyber insurance, and they definitely don't want to do this. So the challenge now is that, yeah, there's lots of compliance and regulation issues, but if you don't do the right things, you may not have insurance. And if you don't have insurance, you don't get a payout. And when you do get hit, then you're in serious trouble. What's your thoughts on the insurance industry, which is an old industry, getting into the cyber game, and many of them still don't have it right. What's your thoughts on that headwind?
Well, so while they've been in cyber for a while now, I think that they're really working to update their risk models and understand. They're starting to ask a lot smarter questions, and they're also starting to demand a certain level of hygiene out of the organizations that they insure. And I think those are trends that we're going to see continue. We're going to see the insurance companies, if you want to be insurable, it's sort of like driving. If you had a lot of accidents and speeding tickets, eventually you can't get car insurance anymore. And I think that, while cyber didn't really have the equivalent of that in the past, I think you're going to start seeing more insurance companies say you have to be this high to ride the ride. And if you're looking for tools to help understand the cyber hygiene and posture of the organizations that they're insuring, because it's reasonable that you look at nation state actors, especially smaller organizations, but even really large ones like Microsoft and Google and others. If a nation state actor is sufficiently motivated and has a limitless budget and they only have to be right one time, it's highly likely they're going to get in. It's just how fast you find them and you recover, contain and recover from it. Smaller organizations, probably won't have fare as well. And so insurance still has a very real important place in risk transfer in organizations. But I think that doing the basics and making sure that, ransomware, like defending against ransomware and making yourself fairly resilient, if not completely resilient to ransomware, is achievable. And I think that it just requires people to do some basic cyber hygiene work. Patching is really important, multi-factor authentication, et cetera. And I think you're starting to see insurance companies ask people to sort of hit that bar at a minimum, which I think is a good thing, not just for insurance, but it's a good thing for the world, because consumer data will be just generally more protected as a result.
Absolutely. It's actually quite interesting that doing just a few things, you can actually up your cybersecurity posture quite a lot, to a point when you might actually be stronger than your competitors. So do the basics. It's sort of obvious. It's amazing that today, 2024, we need to remind people to do the basics. It's like putting on your seatbelt, man. You can go in a car if you want and don't wear your seatbelt. It's okay. You'll get a ticket. But you could die as well. So put it on and get yourself buckled up. Jim, I'll leave you with the last word. What is something maybe that I should have asked you that I didn't, or what message you want to leave with the community? What do you want to say?
Well, I think that the number one thing that we face in cybersecurity today is apathy. And so I would say the thing I would leave everyone with is take action. Take some action today to improve your cybersecurity posture. We think identity should be the number one thing that you go look at to improve the state of your cybersecurity posture, things like multi-factor authentication. But please don't stop watching this video until you take some action today to make the cybersecurity posture of yourself personally and your organization better.
Excellent. And if you really think it's never going to happen to me, well, good luck. That could happen as well, but don't bet on it. The website, by the way, Jim, for everybody to learn more is what?
www.oleria, Oleria.com.
There you go. By the way, what's the meaning of the name?
Oleria is a genus of transparent winged butterflies. And so unlike a lot of other technology companies, we wanted something that was human or organic for our brand, and we're really excited about where we landed.
Wish you all the best, man. It's a big topic, and you may have the actual answer. So check it all out. It's been a pleasure, Jim, and look forward to chatting you at some point in the future. Thanks.
Thank you for the opportunity.